Hey guys, tonight we're about to crack open a diary so scandalous, so secret, that even your phone's algorithm is blushing right now. Welcome to the real hidden world of royal women, their secret affairs, forbidden romances and clandestine power moves that history desperately tried to sweep under a very large, very ornate rug. If you thought your group chats were spicy, wait until you hear about the shenanigans behind castle doors. Spoiler. Half the legitimate heirs in Europe were probably about as legitimate as a vintage purse on Facebook Marketplace. So before you settle in, please take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy these weird, soothing, slightly ridiculous trips into history. If you want, leave a comment with your favourite conspiracy theory, or just tell me what time it is wherever you're listening. I guarantee it's 2 AM for someone right now, possibly plotting an affair with the Earl of Sandwich. Now, dim those lights, flip on a fan for that gentle background hum, and find the softest, least treacherous pillow you own. Maybe double-check your window for wandering monarchs. Get comfortable, get cozy, and prepare to fall asleep with more secrets than the royal family's group therapist. Let's pause. Have you ever wondered what royal women actually did while the king was out jousting or inventing new ways to bankrupt the treasury? Who did queens and princesses write all those innocent letters to? Why are half the castle portraits suddenly looking away, as if they know something you don't? Did anyone ever get caught sneaking down the corridor with a candle and a suspicious smile? And most importantly, how do you keep a secret in a palace full of nosy servants, jealous rivals, and a court jester with zero chill? Well, congratulations, you've just woken up in the 16th century in the biggest, draftiest, most rumour-filled palace Europe has ever seen. You are a royal woman, your diary is locked with a hairpin, and there are eyes in every tapestry. Good luck. Every morning, while the king is pretending to read state papers, you're busy perfecting the art of invisible ink. In an era where privacy means locking your diary and hoping the cat doesn't talk, you're sliding coded love notes behind tapestries like it's royal tinder. Pity the poor servant who delivers them, one wrong turn, and they're explaining poetry to the executioner. Now let's slow down and actually watch you at work. You're seated at a heavy oak table that smells faintly of wax, dust, and old ambition. The window is cracked open just enough to let in cold air and gossip. You dip your pen, but not into ordinary ink. That would be far too obvious. Instead, you're using a clever little concoction: milk, lemon juice, or diluted vinegar. Substances that look like nothing at all until someone knows how to warm the page. This is not a love letter. This is chemistry class with consequences. You write carefully, slowly, because one block could mean everything. The message itself is intentionally boring. On the surface, it's about prayer schedules, embroidery patterns, or the thrilling topic of barley yields. But beneath that bland exterior lives the real message, waiting patiently like a secret tucked into a corset seam. Only one person knows how to read it. Only one person owns the candle that will reveal it. Romance has never required this much fire safety awareness. Let's talk about language for a moment. You don't write "I miss you." That's amateur hour. You write in references. A rose means tonight. A psalm number means the garden path. A mention of St. Jerome means absolutely do not come. The walls have ears. Every word is doing double duty, like a courtier smiling while quietly ruining someone's career. It's exhausting, but you've never felt more alive. Now comes the hardest part: delivery. You ring for a servant and you choose carefully, not the clever one, never the clever one. You want someone earnest, slightly confused, and deeply uninterested in literature. You hand them the letter and say something like, "This is for my cousin. Everyone is your cousin now." The servant nods, bows, and walks away holding your fate between two fingers, like it's laundry instructions. While the letter travels through the palace, you wait. And waiting, it turns out, is the most dangerous part. Every footstep outside your chamber sounds like discovery. Every cough could be an accusation. You imagine the letter being dropped, opened, misread. You imagine someone heating it by accident. A candle tipped too close. A curious hand lingering too long. History, after all, is filled with people who got caught because someone sneezed at the wrong time. Meanwhile, the king clears his throat across the room and turns a page he's already read 3 times. He believes he's in control of the kingdom. You're quietly coordinating an emotional supply chain that spans 3 corridors, 2 staircases, and one extremely judgmental tapestry depicting biblical consequences. Eventually the reply arrives. Not directly, of course. That would be suspicious. It comes folded inside a book of sermons, or tucked into a basket of gloves, or slipped under a plate like a dangerous little dessert. You retrieve it with the grace of someone who definitely isn't shaking inside. Back in your chamber, you lock the door, light a candle, and hold the page close to the flame. The words bloom slowly, like ghosts remembering how to speak. You read them once, then again, then one more time, because you don't know when you'll get another. You commit every line to memory before burning the page down to ash, watching it curl and disappear into the hearth. Evidence management is just part of romance now. And when it's all done, when the letter is gone, the candle blown out, and your face carefully rearranged into royal neutrality, you return to your day. You smile at courtiers, you listen to petitions, you nod thoughtfully at matters of war and taxes. No one knows that before breakfast you risked everything for a paragraph written in milk, which is impressive really, because in a palace full of spies, swords and secrets, the most dangerous weapon you wield all day is stationery. When everyone else is asleep, or pretending to be, you slip quietly into the palace gardens. Moonlit roses, cold stone benches, and the very real risk of bumping into your mother-in-law, romance never smelled so much like manure and panic. Is that a nightingale, or just the gardener having a crisis? Let's set the scene. You open your chamber door with the slow-motion caution of someone who's watched one too many cousins get exiled for less. The castle is silent, except for the soft snores of a guard outside. Lucky for you, he's been bribed with leftover marzipan. Your slippers barely make a sound as you creep through shadowy halls, dodging moonbeams and that one patch of creaky floor that gave you away last month. Down a spiral staircase, cloak wrapped tightly around you, you pause in a drafty alcove to check the time. There are no clocks. You use the ancient method, judging how many candle stubs are left in the corridor and praying none of them belong to the king's hunting party. If you're caught, your excuse is ready. Insomnia and prayer, the two greatest inventions for explaining suspicious midnight walks. You step into the gardens, where the air is crisp, sweet with damp earth, and faintly tinged with the smell of sheep fertilizer, because nothing says eternal love like decomposing manure. The roses gleam pale under the moon, thorns glistening with dew, and somewhere a fountain burbles loudly as if trying to gossip. You slip along gravel paths, heart thudding, dodging statues that look far too judgmental for this hour. There are rules to these rendezvous. Never take the same route twice. Never trust a statue with eyes that seem to follow you. And never, under any circumstances, let the palace cats see you. They report to no one and everyone, and last week one of them delivered a dead mouse to your pillow in what can only be interpreted as a warning. Tonight, your secret meeting place is the old stone bench under the linden tree. The seat is always cold, the tree is always shedding something sticky, and the risk of discovery is always high. Your breath fogs in the night air as you wait, pretending to admire the topiary while scanning every shadow for movement. The moon is bright enough to illuminate your nerves, but thankfully, not bright enough for anyone at the windows to see who you are. Every tiny noise is amplified in the darkness. Footsteps in the grass, your heart leaps, then drops. It's just the gardener, muttering to himself about slugs. You freeze behind a rose bush, stifling a sneeze as petals tickle your nose. This is the reality of royal romance. Cold feet, runny noses, and the constant risk that someone's going to propose marriage just because you both like night air. Finally, your companion arrives. He appears from behind the hedge, as nervous as you, nearly tripping over a sleeping peacock. The greeting is brief, a whispered hello, hands just barely brushing in the dark. Every moment together is loaded with peril and possibility. Conversation is kept soft, topics carefully chosen. You discuss coded messages, exchanged books, a mutual dislike for the royal physician's soup. You steal a few precious minutes, talking, laughing, sharing secrets in a world that has precious little space for genuine connection. The cold of the stone seeps through your dress, and the scent of roses and soil is a reminder that even here, surrounded by luxury, you are not immune to discomfort. The night is beautiful, yes, but it's also dangerous. You watch the clouds drift across the moon, counting them like blessings and escape routes. Soon, it's time to part. One last look, one last whisper, a promise to meet again, or at least to try. You slip away, retracing your steps, leaving no trace but the faintest imprint on the damp grass. By the time you return to your chamber, the castle is silent once more, and you slide into bed with a heart pounding from more than just the midnight air. As you drift towards sleep, you wonder, was it worth the risk? The cold, the manure, the possibility of discovery? Yes, because sometimes, in a world where everything you do is watched, judged, and recorded for history, the smallest moments of freedom, a glance, a touch, a quiet laugh, are the greatest rebellion of all. And as the palace resumes its breathing, you let yourself dream, just a little, of moonlit gardens and the sweet, ridiculous peril of royal romance. You're supposed to be repenting for eating too many almond pastries. Instead, you're whispering coded messages to a sympathetic priest with a suspiciously detailed memory. Is he a spiritual advisor or your secret mailman? Either way, you exit forgiven and slightly giddy. Let's take a deep breath and sink into the incense-soaked gloom of the palace chapel. It's early afternoon, the only time when your absence can be explained by spiritual reflection, which is 60% code for hiding from your in-laws and 40% a legitimate break from royal chaos. You step through the heavy oak doors, feeling the sudden drop in temperature and the rise in anxiety. Candles flicker, saints frown, and somewhere in the shadows your confessor is waiting, ostensibly to save your soul, but tonight he's also saving your social life. You kneel, hands folded demurely, trying to look as if you're reflecting deeply on your sins, not scanning the pews for nosy courtiers. The wood of the confessional is polished smooth by centuries of secrets. On the other side of the screen, a voice murmurs, "Bless you, my child, but you both know what you're here for. This is less repentance for impure thoughts, and more secret update on the progress of Operation Meet My Lover in the Garden. Confession, after all, is one of the last private spaces left to you. No ladies in waiting, no watchful aunts, no tapestry that might suddenly blink. Just you, the priest, and a mutual understanding. What's said here is between you, God, and maybe the local courier network. Because let's be honest, Father Basil has the sort of selective memory that could make a diplomat blush. He forgets every mundane sin, but never misses a detail about when you'll need the keys to the East Gate. You start with the basics. I confess, Father, that I coveted pastries during Lent. He makes a non-committal sound, already scribbling a mental note. This is the coded opener. In palace slang, pastries means love letters, and Lent means the period of extreme boredom between festivals. You wait for his reply. If he tells you to do 3 Hail Marys, the coast is clear. If he suggests a week of fasting, it means someone's been asking questions and you need to be careful. You confess your envy of another courtier's garden, which actually means you're plotting to meet someone at the old Eumays. There are entire dictionaries devoted to court confessional code, half invented by bored nuns, half by desperate lovers who ran out of plausible sins years ago. For the truly advanced, there's a system of saints. St. Agnes means midnight, St. Jerome means bring wine, and St. Anthony is code for abort mission, the king is in a mood. Meanwhile, on the other side of the screen, Father Basil is a master of multitasking. He'll nod, look pious, and should anyone walk by, launch into a spontaneous homily about the importance of honesty, all while palming your note and slipping a response into the pocket of your prayer book. He's like a medieval inbox, complete with spam filter and excellent encryption, namely, the threat of eternal damnation for snitches. You might think this is all fun and games until you realise the stakes. If anyone even suspects your confession is anything but spiritual, you're risking a lot more than 3 Hail Marys. Punishments for abusing the sacrament range from public penance to a lifetime of eating boiled turnips with your second least favourite cousin. And let's not even mention the awkwardness of seeing your priest at the next royal banquet, eyes twinkling as you both pretend not to know anything about moonlit garden meetings. Still, you keep coming back. The confessional isn't just your post office. It's your therapist, your co-conspirator, and your safety valve. Here you can admit things you'd never dare whisper elsewhere. Not just about forbidden meetings, but about how lonely it is at the top, how heavy the crown feels, how even queens and princesses want to be seen for who they really are, not just the roles they play. You leave lighter, sometimes giddy, clutching a prescribed prayer as cover. Outside, the chapel feels brighter. You nod politely to a passing noblewoman who's definitely pretending not to be listening at the door. The air is fresher, the palace less suffocating. For one moment, you're not just a pawn in someone else's chess game. You're a player, with secrets all your own, hidden behind incense, ritual, and the unbreakable seal of confession. And that, in the world of royal intrigue, is as close to true freedom as you're ever going to get. Sometimes love means donning the world's worst wig and pretending to be a laundry maid. You never knew the true meaning of itchy until you tried to escape your own chambers dressed as a peasant, all for a 5-minute chat by the stables. And they say romance is dead. Let's walk through the preposterous ritual of royal disguise, shall we? The first lesson: forget everything you know about subtlety. The palace is a living, breathing rumour mill, where a missing slipper is breaking news and your new peasant shoes are so lumpy they could be classified as blunt instruments. You start by eyeing your reflection in a clouded mirror, hair tucked up, cheeks smeared with a suspicious amount of soot, and a skirt that's seen more action on laundry day than in any ball. The trick is to look convincingly unremarkable, but somehow you always end up looking like a court jester's disappointing cousin. You pull a wig over your hair, one so scratchy it makes you question every decision that led you here. Apparently peasants have itchy scalps and mysterious odours, but at least no one recognises you by your signature perfume. Your hands, usually soft from rose oil, are now strategically dirty, and you do your best to perfect the art of peasant's posture, which, as it turns out, is just standing slightly hunched and looking like you have unpaid debts. Now comes the choreography. You shuffle past real maids who throw you the kind of side-eye reserved for imposters, and people who spill chamber pots. The kitchen is a labyrinth of scowling cooks, flying ladles, and at least one goose with territorial issues. You mumble, you nod, and you try not to speak, because the second you ask where the stables are in fluent French, you'll blow your cover faster than the king after 3 glasses of mead. Outside, the world is different. The palace gardens, once a place for strolling and plotting, are now an obstacle course. You duck under laundry lines, sidestep a wheelbarrow full of unmentionables, and nearly trip over a dog who is suspiciously good at identifying members of the royal family by smell alone. You're sweating, not just from nerves, but because this disguise is basically a portable sauna made of potato sacks. Reaching the stables is a victory in itself. The smell is legendary, a pungent blend of hay, horses, and a faint whiff of something that probably predates your great-great-grandmother. But your heart leaps at the sight of your co-conspirator, just as badly disguised, his farmer accent so bad it should be a hanging offence. You share a few whispered words, maybe a note, maybe a joke about the cook's latest disaster. The thrill is in the risk, the romance measured by how many chickens you have to dodge just to hear hello. Of course, every minute is borrowed time. A stable boy wanders too close. The horses snort at your perfume. One of them almost blows your cover with an enthusiastic sniff. You know you have to get back before the court starts counting laundry maids and discovers they have one too many. The return journey is even more perilous. A nosy footman asks your name. You blurt out the first thing that comes to mind: Marjorie. There are already 3 Marjories on staff, so no one bats an eye. You pray you're not asked to fold anything, because last time you tried, you invented a new type of wrinkle. Back in your chambers, the transformation reverses. You pull off the wig, finally sweet relief. You wipe off the soot, trade your rough linen for velvet, and practice your most innocent, slightly bored face in the mirror. When your lady-in-waiting asks if you've seen anything unusual, you shake your head and say you spent the afternoon embroidering, which is true in the sense that embroidery now includes smuggling love notes in your sleeve. If anyone asks, the princess spent the day practicing her needlework. Only you and a handful of stable rats know the truth. Sometimes, love looks like dirt under your fingernails, blisters on your heels, and the world's worst wig itching your scalp. It's uncomfortable, undignified, and slightly ridiculous. But then, so is most of history, and in the end, you'd endure 1,000 itchy wigs for a chance at one honest conversation behind the hay bales, out of sight, out of gossip's reach, and just for a moment, free. Every noble house has a portrait or two that's seen things, but yours, it's practically a confession. You pose for hours, staring mournfully into the middle distance, while the artist subtly paints your lover's initials into the folds of your velvet sleeve. Art historians, eat your heart out. Let's pull back the velvet curtain and linger in the musty air of the portrait studio. Oil paints, turpentine, and the slightly scorched aroma of anxiety fill the air. Your dress, chosen for the occasion, is so stiff with embroidery it could probably stand up and pose by itself. You're supposed to look pious, noble, perhaps just a bit tragic. No one smiles in these portraits unless they're hiding a secret worth several castles. The artist, let's call him Master Lorenzo, wields his brush with steady hands and a mischievous glint in his eye. He's painted everyone from blushing debutantes to war-worn uncles, but today you're his most interesting commission by far. Because as he quietly reminds you, art is forever, and secrets have a habit of outliving everyone involved. The sitting itself is a marathon in slow motion. You settle onto a too-hard chair, holding a pose so carefully composed that even your heartbeat seems staged. A little to the left, Your Grace. Now gaze as if you're considering the fate of the nation, or perhaps something juicier. Lorenzo's whispered commentary is for your ears only, and you fight back a smile. You're not just enduring boredom, you're orchestrating a clandestine scandal in oil and canvas. While you appear lost in noble thought, Lorenzo gets to work on the hidden details. Your sleeve, bunched just so, now contains a swirl of golden thread that will, to most eyes, look like a bit of floral patterning. But if you know what to look for, if you know the cipher, there it is. The subtle curve of an A, the looping tail of a G, your lover's initials stitched into immortality. The average courtier won't notice, but the one who matters will. This is the 16th century equivalent of subtweeting, except the tweet will still be hanging in the Great Hall long after your dust. Your hand rests on a book, the title carefully chosen. The page is open to a particular sonnet, the one you exchanged in a letter 3 summers ago, its words copied out in tiny, perfect script along the painted edge. The artist, for all his talent, is also a confidant. He coughs and makes small talk about pigment while your heart thuds with the thrill of hiding in plain sight. Hours pass. Court officials wander in and out, some pretending to admire Lorenzo's technique, others just angling for gossip. You're congratulated for your restraint and composure, if only they knew. Holding perfectly still is easy compared to keeping your secret, and all the while the portrait grows, a slow, silent record of both who you are and who you dare to love. At the final sitting you review the work. Lorenzo tilts the canvas just so, letting the sunlight reveal all the layers. There's the locket around your throat painted with a single, almost invisible pearl. There's the tiny sprig of rosemary tucked behind your ear, a signal in the language of flowers. Remembrance. Your lover will notice, and maybe, just maybe, a bored historian in a few centuries will write a footnote about unusual botanical symbolism. When the painting is unveiled, the entire court gathers to pass judgment. They nod approvingly at the craftsmanship, praise your likeness, and squint at the odd way your fingers curl around the painted handkerchief. Such an elegant gesture, they'll say, having no idea the embroidery matches your lover's family crest. Years will go by. The portrait will be dusted, moved from hall to hall, admired and forgotten in turn. Generations of bored children will trace the folds of your dress, never suspecting that the pattern spells out a love story the poets never dared write. And you'll walk past it every day, chin high, heart racing, knowing that for all their scrutiny, no one has truly seen you, not the real you. Because the truest secrets in the palace aren't the ones whispered in shadowy corridors. They're the ones hung in broad daylight, hiding in brushstrokes, waiting for the right eyes to find them. And centuries later, as art historians debate the meaning of your enigmatic smile, you'll still be winning the game of royal intrigue, one coded flourish at a time. At every ball, there's the official guest list and the unofficial one. You dance with the king, curtsy to ambassadors, and then, with a wink, pass your dance card to the only person in the room who can read your coded glances. Try not to trip over your own nerves, or his feet. Let's step into the grand ballroom, a vast hall aglow with the yellow haze of hundreds of beeswax candles, floor polished to the point of public hazard, and an atmosphere so heavy with perfume and intrigue that you could bottle it and sell it as regal anxiety, ode to paranoia. You're wearing enough silk to fund a minor principality and more jewels than a pawnshop's wildest dream. Every detail, every hairpin, every ribbon, every fold in your skirt is calculated, rehearsed, weaponized. On paper, the night is simple. You glide from dance to dance, partner to partner, with a smile so practiced it should qualify as an Olympic sport. First, there's the king, a must, even if his sense of rhythm is best described as dignified lurching. Then the ambassador from somewhere cold, who smells faintly of pickled herring and compromise. The music swells, feet shuffle, and above it all rises the endless drone of gossip and speculation. But for you, the ball is a covert operation. Your real mission begins the moment you accept your dance card from the Master of Ceremonies. To most, it's just a list of names and tunes. To you, it's a battlefield map. The order of partners, the number of dances, the choice of song, all of it layered with meaning. A waltz at the third hour means wait. A minuet after midnight means meet in the corridor by the tapestry with the suspicious horse. The art of passing your card is its own ballet. With a practiced flick of the wrist, you swap dance cards with your chosen co-conspirator, perhaps a dashing lord with an unfortunate moustache, or a lady-in-waiting whose real talents have nothing to do with embroidery. Your coded message is nestled in the smallest of details, a flower doodled in the margin, a single note circled twice, an ink blot that means abort mission. This is espionage, but with more sequins and a higher risk of twisted ankles. Each dance is a performance. Your heart pounds as you make small talk, every word weighed, every glance measured. The wrong smile could invite suspicion. The right one could start a rumour that lasts for generations. Sometimes, you and your intended partner end up paired by luck or by elaborate bribery. The moment your hands touch, the world contracts to a few square feet of marble floor and the wildly erratic beat of your pulse. As the music starts, you lean in, barely whispering. The nightingale sings late, you say, which actually means I left you a note in the silver teapot. Your partner replies with an innocuous comment about the weather, code for someone's watching, keep spinning. You're forced to maintain poise as you're spun away, heart hammering, mind racing through every contingency in case your dance card falls into the wrong hands. The dangers are real. Too much eye contact and the Dowager Duchess will notice. Too little, and your lover thinks you've changed your mind. The court jester is everywhere, watching with eyes that miss nothing, and the king's cousin has a habit of appearing whenever secrets are afoot. Even the musicians are in on the act. One wrong note, and your cue is ruined. At the end of the night you curtsy, your face a mask of exhausted grace. The card, now safely back in your possession, holds a dozen secrets no one else will ever decode. The guests disperse, chattering about the colour of your gown and who nearly set fire to the draperies with a rogue candelabra. You slip away, nerves jangling, ready to decipher your own message and perhaps plan another rendezvous before the week is out. Because at court, every ball is a chessboard, every dance a gamble, and sometimes the most dangerous step isn't the one you take on the polished floor, but the one you take towards someone who actually knows your secret. You ask the astrologer about your destiny, but really you're checking if Venus is a good cover story for why you keep meeting the captain of the guard. If the stars can predict next Thursday's secret picnic, all the better. Mercury in retrograde means hide the evidence. Let's take a gentle stroll down the corridor lined with faded tapestries and find the one room where incense outnumbers common sense, the astrologer's chamber. This place smells like old books, burning sage, and whatever happens when candle wax mixes with mild panic. You slip inside, shutting the heavy wooden door behind you, and immediately scan for signs of recent activity. A lopsided star chart, a collection of questionable crystals, and a set of dice that definitely weren't issued by the church. The astrologer himself is a man who speaks in riddles and looks perpetually underslept, as if deciphering royal horoscopes has left him unable to trust either his own dreams or anyone else's. He greets you with a solemn nod, because everything here is solemn, even when the topic is whether you'll meet a tall, dark stranger or just your least favourite cousin at dinner. You keep your face carefully neutral. After all, you're here for guidance about your life path, which tonight is less about cosmic destiny and more about clandestine logistics. You feign curiosity about Saturn's influence on your health and well-being, but what you're really asking is, will there be enough cloud cover to avoid detection during Thursday's stroll? The astrologer peers at a complicated chart, his finger tracing a line between Mars and a little doodle he insists is the moon. Your path is clouded, he intones. You nod sagely, interpreting this as stick to the shadows. Now, the real test, Venus. You ask about your romantic prospects, eyes wide with practiced innocence. The astrologer leans in, lowers his voice, and assures you that Venus is in a favourable aspect. What he doesn't say, but you both understand, is that this is your excuse for sending a very specific bouquet to a very specific guard. The captain of the guard, a man with suspiciously clean boots and a jawline that could cut glass, is waiting for your celestial signal. In the world of palace intrigue, nothing is more convenient than a planetary alignment to justify a sudden change in plans. But the astrologer has his own rules. Mercury in retrograde, that's his code for be careful. Hide the evidence, burn the letters, double-check your stories about why you were in the South Corridor at midnight. Even the stars, it seems, have a sense of humour and a vested interest in palace survival. Sometimes you suspect the astrologer enjoys this game more than anyone. He's the only one allowed to tell the Queen what to do, provided he couches it in enough astronomical jargon. Avoid fire signs, he warns, especially this week. You agree, and mentally cross Lord Percival, notorious pyromaniac, tragically born a Leo, off your list of possible scapegoats. The consultation is as much performance as prophecy. You listen to his advice, nod thoughtfully, and leave with a folded paper full of lucky numbers and star glyphs that conveniently correspond to the dates and locations of your next tryst. Sometimes he slips in a coded warning. Mars approaches from the east means the king is in a mood. A rare conjunction means the kitchens will be serving oysters, which is really only important if you like oysters or hate spending the evening with people who do. Back in your chamber, you scan the star chart, tracing imaginary lines that look suspiciously like escape routes. You tuck the astrologer's notes into your prayer book, the one with half the psalms bookmarked for reasons unrelated to salvation. If anyone asks, you're planning your week according to the movements of Jupiter. If they push, you say you're worried about omens. Nobody argues with omens, especially not the ones involving Mercury, who has a knack for retrograde timing whenever you need it most. In a world where every action can be questioned and every conversation could become evidence, the stars are your alibi. Venus gets you out of dinner, Saturn gets you out of embroidery lessons, and Mercury gets you out of trouble, at least until the next planetary shuffle. It's not just romance by moonlight, it's palace strategy by starlight, and you've never been more grateful for the elaborate nonsense of celestial charts. So the next time someone asks about your future, you just smile, wink, and say you're waiting for Venus to give you a sign. If you're lucky, she'll send the captain of the guard with it, and if not, well, there's always another alignment, another excuse, and another night for romance hidden safely in the margins of fate. What's better than a bouquet? A bouquet hidden inside a laundry basket and delivered by the most overworked maid in Europe. Jewellery, letters, and occasionally an entire roast chicken. If you can hide it in the linens, you can send it anywhere. The castle laundry, not just for socks. Let's peek inside the most chaotic corner of the royal palace, the laundry room. This is the place where dignity goes to be boiled, beaten, and occasionally, if you're very lucky, returned with only minor scorch marks. At any given moment, the laundry is a swirling storm of steam, soap, gossip, and arguments over whose nightgown is currently clogging the copper tub. The air is thick with the scent of lavender, lie, and missed opportunity. You, queen, princess, or ingeniously meddlesome noble, have discovered that amidst the piles of sheets and undergarments lies an opportunity for the kind of secret correspondence that would make a master spy jealous. Forget locked chests and coded scrolls. If you really want to get something from one end of the palace to the other, you wrap it in last week's linens and trust in the universal truth. Nobody, not even the king, voluntarily inspects the laundry. Your accomplice is the head laundry maid. She's been here longer than the floorboards, and she knows every secret path between the laundry room and the royal chambers. She also knows which stains are caused by wine, which by blood, and which by an ill-timed attempt to make your own beetroot lipstick. She's fiercely loyal to you, to her meagre wages, and to the little system you've created for smuggling forbidden treasures under the guise of clean sheets. Today's delivery is a bundle of wildflowers, their stems carefully wrapped in a ribbon, all of it nestled in a pile of monogrammed handkerchiefs. Tomorrow, it might be a velvet pouch with a locket, or a love letter cleverly tucked between layers of extra urgent tablecloths. On very special occasions, when the kitchen staff is feeling generous or blackmailable, a perfectly roasted chicken might make the journey, hidden beneath so many layers of linen that, by the time it arrives, it's developed a complex relationship with the scent of lavender. The process is a dance of timing and discretion. You signal the maid with a cough, a dropped glove, or, when things are especially daring, a handkerchief embroidered with a certain forget-me-not. She knows what to do, and more importantly, what not to ask. The gift makes its way through an obstacle course of soapy buckets, drying racks, and suspicious footmen who wouldn't recognise a romantic plot if it smacked them in the face with a wet towel. Of course, there are risks. One misplaced bundle and your secret is flapping on the line for all to see. There's always the chance that a well-meaning servant will deliver your carefully penned love letter to the king's study. mistaking it for a recipe for removing wine stains. Every laundry day is an adventure, equal parts espionage and slapstick comedy. But oh, the joy of success. You watch from your window as the laundry cart rattles across the courtyard, heart pounding, praying that nobody decides today is the day to audit the towels. When the return delivery arrives, a small package of sugared almonds, perhaps, or a note tied in blue ribbon, you feel a thrill that not even the grandest banquet can match. For the recipient, every item is a message, a memory, a promise. A pressed flower means I'm thinking of you. A book of prayers, bookmarked with a peacock feather, means meet me at sunset. Even a perfectly folded napkin can hold a meaning so layered only 2 people in the world could ever understand it. And through it all, the laundrymaid keeps her secrets and her tip jar full. She has seen everything, forgotten nothing, and if she ever writes her memoirs, half the kingdom will have to move to avoid scandal. But for now, the wheels of romance keep turning, fueled by soap, steam, and a well-timed roast chicken. So next time you grumble about folding your socks, just remember, in a royal palace, true love might be hiding in the laundry basket, making the mundane magical, one secret, one sheet, one slightly floral-scented chicken at a time. Every good romance needs a secret language, and you're inventing yours in the margins of devotional texts. The trick? Make your love letters sound like you're really into St. Augustine. Even the bishop is confused, but your lover reads between the lines and between the psalms. Let's open one of these precious books bound in cracked leather, the gold leaf faded by candlelight and decades of nervous thumbing. It smells of incense, beeswax, and the faint anxiety of every noble who's ever had to prove just how pious they are publicly. But you're not here to recite the Psalms. You're here to turn chapter and verse into a thrilling game of literary espionage. It starts innocently enough. You select a favourite text, say, a book of hours, or a battered collection of saintly wisdom. Every lady in the palace has one. You're seen with it at meals in chapel, and especially during those excruciatingly long council meetings, where the only thing at risk of being saved is your sanity. You keep your head bowed over the pages, feigning interest in theological disputes as your quill does the real work in the margins. Now, you could just write, I adore you, but that's far too easy to spot and even easier to misinterpret as spiritual fervour for the saints. No, you get creative. Each saint stands for something. St. Lucy is light, meet at dawn. St. Michael is danger, the king is in a mood. And St. Augustine, well, he's code for tonight, West Gallery after prayers. Your marginalia are a symphony of feigned enlightenment and actual mischief. You pepper your devotional notes with verses only your lover would notice. Psalm 91 verse 11. You scribble, which is your agreed-upon page for tucking secret letters. A single flower doodle in the corner means, I miss you. 3 dots after a particularly dull passage are a plea for rescue from a dinner party gone rogue. To anyone else, it looks like you're just a deeply committed reader, or someone who's fighting a losing battle with a leaky inkwell. Sometimes, you leave entire letters hidden between the pages. Folded so small they look like bookmarks, they contain lines of poetry disguised as pious reflection. The soul longs for the company of a kindred spirit, you write. A phrase which could mean spiritual friendship, or a not-so-platonic midnight rendezvous, depending on who's reading. The bishop, bless him, is delighted by your devotion. Your lover, meanwhile, knows to look for the faintest smudge near the word charity. That's the real clue. Swapping books becomes an art form. You lend your book of hours to your dear friend, and it comes back with a new marginal note. Maybe a cheeky response hidden as a prayer request. Or a new code worked into the genealogy of saints. The risk is half the fun. One misplaced volume and your whole clandestine system could be upended. But, as with all great romances, the possibility of discovery only heightens the thrill. Of course, there are close calls. Once, the abbot remarks on your refreshingly modern interpretation of original sin. Another time, your mother-in-law borrows your prayer book for just a moment, and you nearly have a heart attack watching her thumb past 3 weeks of coded correspondence. You manage to distract her with a question about relics, always a winning move, and breathe again only once your secret is safely back in your hands. Over time, your book becomes a palimpsest of longing and clever misdirection. Each scribble a memory, each passage a message. Only you and your confidant know that God's grace sometimes means meet at the old well, and repentance is a heartfelt apology for a missed meeting. The devotional becomes your diary, your post office, and your playground. So, while others see a pious princess lost in prayer, you're actually orchestrating a romance of the mind. A slow, burning conversation that lives in footnotes and flourishes. It's patient, perilous, and poetic. Love that hides in holy places and only grows bolder with every careful turn of the page. You trust your ladies-in-waiting mostly, but someone's always listening, and you're 99% sure the woman folding your nightgown is on the payroll of 3 rival duchesses and an ambitious squirrel. Every conversation is a performance, every compliment a landmine. Let's take a step inside your chamber, a supposed sanctuary that feels more like the main stage of a royal circus. Boudoir life isn't just silk and scented oils, it's espionage by candlelight, and everyone in the room is armed with sharp ears and sharper agendas. At first glance, the ladies-in-waiting appear innocent, giggling over embroidery, fussing over hairpins, arguing about the proper way to starch a ruff. But behind every dropped stitch is a story waiting to be traded for favours, or at least a better seat at supper. Your most trusted confidant, let's call her Lady Cecily, helps you lace your gown and offers gentle reminders about court etiquette. She's loyal, or at least as loyal as anyone who could earn a comfortable retirement for one juicy secret. Across the room, another maid straightens your slippers, humming off-key, eyes flickering between you and the door. You wonder if she's keeping track of which shoes you wear, building a dossier on your midnight excursions. Privacy? A fantasy. Even the tapestries are rumoured to have ears. The real challenge is knowing which lady is on which payroll this week. Some are spies for other noble families, hoping for gossip that can be used to tilt the balance of power. Some are ambitious social climbers, eager to trade palace secrets for invitations to better parties. And a rare few are just bored, collecting scandals like pressed flowers to brighten their dullest afternoons. Every sentence you utter is crafted with the care of a statesman signing a treaty. Asking after a missing brooch could mean you're signalling to a lover. Complimenting a hairstyle might be interpreted as a veiled threat. Even your laughter must be measured. Too much, and you're suspected of hiding something. Too little, and someone writes home that you're depressed. A rumour almost as dangerous as an affair. In this world, silence is often your best ally. You practice the art of saying nothing. A slow nod, a gentle, a look that could mean I'm delighted or I know what you did last Thursday. If you must share news, you seed it with just enough confusion that, by the time it makes its way to the Duchess, it's become the story of a stolen goose, not a stolen heart. But even silence isn't foolproof. There are moments when you must speak, and so you turn to coded language. You and Lady Cecily have developed an entire system. A reference to new linens means the coast is clear. The blue ribbon means someone is eavesdropping. Rosewater is a warning to change the subject immediately. Your conversations become a dance of implication and evasion, a waltz of wits under the wary gaze of a dozen curious eyes. There are close calls, of course. Once you overhear 2 maids whispering about the mysterious note found in your cloak. Heart pounding, you realise it's the shopping list for your favourite pastries, now the hottest item of gossip in 3 counties. You retrieve it and replace it with an even more cryptic message. Let them puzzle over your sudden interest in turnips and goose fat. Occasionally you can't help but admire the sheer audacity of your ladies. One pretends to faint during a particularly juicy exchange, hoping to overhear something important while unconscious. Another volunteers to clean your writing desk, lingering just a bit too long near the drawer where you keep your correspondence. You reward her with a stern glance and a completely mundane letter addressed to your aunt about embroidery floss. Despite it all, there are genuine moments of warmth, a shared laugh, a midnight confession, a whispered comfort on a difficult day. But you never let your guard down entirely. Even your closest friends have secrets, and in a palace where information is currency, trust is always given on a sliding scale. So you play your part, poised and pleasant, spinning a web of truth, half-truths, and outright nonsense. And when you finally retreat to your bed at night, drawing the curtains and letting your guard slip just an inch, you remind yourself, in the royal boudoir, everyone is an actor, and everyone has a role to play. Even you. No palace affair is complete without a royal watchdog, usually a sour-faced aunt or an uncle who smells of gout and suspicion. Their hobby? Making your life miserable, and if possible, exposing your secret friendships. Good luck keeping a straight face at breakfast. Let's meet your favourite family member, the royal watchdog. Every court has one. You'll find them lurking in corridors at dawn, nostrils flaring for scandal like a truffle pig for secrets. They're a fixture at every meal, a shadow at every party, and the primary reason you've perfected the art of hiding notes in your bread roll. Whether they're armed with a monocle or a thunderous frown, their main goal in life is to sniff out impropriety and report it, with the gleeful energy of a child spotting a mouse in the pantry. This particular watchdog is an aunt. Let's call her Lady Euphemia. She's been temporarily living in the palace since before you were born, which is coincidentally when the last real scandal erupted. No one remembers exactly why she never married, but rumour has it the proposal was called off after her fiancé realised her only true passion was reading other people's mail. Her morning routine consists of 3 cups of bitter tea, 2 laps around the gallery, and 1 detailed report of everyone's facial expressions at dinner, hand-delivered to whoever is in charge of being offended that week. You can spot her coming by the sound of her cane tapping out Morse code for I know what you did. She claims it's for support, but you're fairly certain she uses it as a prop to poke around in corners and under drapes. Her questions are always sharp. Where were you at 10 last night, dear? Who was that young man by the Rose Arch? Is it true you've developed a sudden interest in Hungarian poetry? You answer with all the poise of a person in a job interview for a job you definitely don't want. Lady Euphemia's special talent is remembering the name of every servant and the exact position of every candlestick in the palace. If a chair is out of place, she notices. If your hairpin is missing, she suspects. If you laugh a little too loudly at breakfast, she spends the rest of the day interrogating the cook as to whether the eggs tasted unusually joyful. Your entire romantic strategy has had to evolve just to stay one step ahead of her relentless curiosity. The trick you found is misdirection. You invent a sudden interest in embroidery, which requires long, solitary evenings and a locked door. You wax poetic about the architectural history of the West Wing, just so you can slip away unnoticed when Lady Euphemia's attention drifts to correcting a footman's posture. If you're feeling daring, you enlist your youngest cousin as a decoy, sending them running down the hallway with a fake love note, while you quietly rendezvous with a real one by the stables. Breakfast, of course, is the ultimate test. Lady Euphemia watches you butter your toast as if you might be hiding state secrets beneath the marmalade. Every cough, every glance, every second piece of fruit is a potential clue. Conversation is a minefield. She'll pepper you with questions about last night's music or who you sat beside at dinner, waiting for you to slip up. It's a wonder anyone survives to lunchtime with their dignity intact. Despite her persistence, you can't help but feel a grudging respect for the old watchdog. She's survived decades of court intrigue and emerged as the palace's undisputed champion of suspicion. And deep down, perhaps she's just lonely, more invested in everyone else's secrets than facing her own. Sometimes, when you see her sitting alone, glaring at the fire, you almost want to invite her into the conspiracy. Almost. But for now, you'll keep playing the game. You'll laugh politely at her barbs, deflect her questions with carefully rehearsed half-truths, and keep your real secrets buried under a mountain of innocent hobbies and polite smiles. Because in a palace built on gossip and rivalry, the only thing harder than having a secret affair is keeping it from Lady Euphemia, the watchdog who never ever sleeps. And as you sip your morning tea, you remind yourself, in the world of royal intrigue, the sharpest claws don't always belong to the cat. Sometimes they belong to the aunt with the endless questions and the nose for trouble. Masked balls are the safest place for flirting and the most dangerous place for reputations. Under a feathered mask, you're just another anonymous guest unless your laugh gives you away. One wrong slip, and your secret is the talk of the town by sunrise. Let's step through the grand double doors into a world that's 1 part fairy tale, 2 parts chaos, and all parts risk. The palace ballroom has been transformed. Shimmering candlelight flickers off mirrors and gilded columns, shadows dancing on the walls like gossip with legs. Every guest is cloaked in velvet, brocade, and at least 3 layers of plausible deniability. The air is thick with perfume, powdered wigs, and the hope that whatever happens tonight will stay artfully hidden behind a mask. The mask is your ticket to freedom. For a few blissful hours, you're not the anxious princess, the bored countess, or the queen with too many enemies and not enough trustworthy courtiers. You're a mysterious stranger in peacock feathers and painted silk, your real identity lost in a sea of laughter and swirling skirts. With every step you feel the thrill of anonymity. Anyone could be anyone, your worst rival, your secret admirer, or the royal jester who has absolutely no business looking that good in a domino mask. You move through the crowd, collecting compliments and rumours with equal ease. Each conversation is a puzzle. Who is behind that wolf mask? Is that really the ambassador's wife, or just someone borrowing her perfume? You flirt with abandon, emboldened by the certainty that tonight nothing counts and everything is up for grabs. The music is fast, the wine is strong, and the rules are gloriously suspended. But make no mistake, this is also the most dangerous stage in the palace. Every gesture is loaded, every touch is an invitation and a risk. It's a minefield disguised as a party, and the masks only sharpen the stakes. All it takes is a familiar laugh, a signature gesture, or the hint of a birthmark peeking from behind a silk ribbon for your secret to unravel. The sharpest-eyed dowagers are already on the hunt, trailing through the party like bloodhounds in pearls, eager to catch someone, anyone, making a misstep. There are the games, of course. Daring guests exchange coded tokens, fans, gloves, sprigs of lavender, each one packed with hidden meaning. A dropped handkerchief at midnight is the signal for a moonlit rendezvous. A blue feather slipped into a glass of punch says, "Meet me in the gallery." It's espionage for romantics, and you're a master at the game. Still, your heart pounds every time someone draws too close. You laugh, perhaps a bit too loudly, and catch the gaze of a masked stranger who just might know exactly who you are. For a moment you worry, is your secret safe, or is your identity about to become the latest headline in the palace rumour mill? The danger is half the fun. The other half is the way your feet never quite touch the ground. Midnight arrives, and with it, the unmasking a moment of exquisite tension where truth and pretense collide. Masks are lifted, faces revealed, and hearts race as alliances are confirmed or betrayed. Did you dance with your dearest friend or your most dangerous foe? Will the king recognise the gypsy queen as his own wife? Only the candles and a few sharp-eyed gossips know for sure. As dawn creeps into the sky, you slip away from the ballroom, your mask in hand, your pulse still thrumming with adrenaline and relief. If you've been clever, your secret remains yours alone. If not, well, the morning will bring whispers, giggles, and the distinct feeling that everyone is watching you a little too closely over breakfast. But for tonight at least, you've tasted the wild, improbable freedom of being someone else. In the masquerade's shadowy embrace, you found a rare space where love, intrigue, and adventure could dance together, if only until sunrise. And that, for a royal with secrets to keep, is worth every risk the night has to offer. Prayer books are everywhere, and nobody questions a queen who's suddenly religious. But each dog-eared page is a secret. Petals pressed between psalms, confessions hidden among the prayers. If anyone asks, you're just praying for good harvests. Let's settle into a quiet corner of the palace chapel, where the air is cool and heavy with incense, and even the nosiest courtier thinks twice before intruding. Here, under flickering candlelight and the watchful eyes of a dozen faded saints, your prayer book becomes your most ingenious tool for clandestine communication. On the outside, it's pious routine. On the inside, it's a marvel of secret compartments, coded messages, and the occasional slightly wilted rose petal that's definitely not an offering for the Virgin Mary. Every courtier knows that if you want to disappear for an hour, private prayer is the most convenient excuse in the world. So you claim your favourite pew, arrange your skirts with the solemnity of a bishop, and open your prayer book to the right psalm, never by accident. It's here, nestled between the canticles and the litanies, that love lives in the margins. One page is dog-eared, which means yes. Another is marked with a slip of pressed lavender, wait for me after Vespers. You're not just praying for good harvests, you're orchestrating midnight meetings and silent declarations. Your messages are written with the utmost care, in a hand so small and neat that only someone who's been told exactly where to look will find them. A simple Pax Vobiscum could mean meet me in the West Corridor, while Sanctus, Sanctus, Sanctus is code for I love you. Or I'm terrified someone will find this, so burn it after reading. To everyone else, your prayer book is a record of spiritual devotion. To you, it's a running conversation with the only person who matters, one where every psalm is a promise and every hymn a hiding place. Of course, the risk is half the thrill. One careless moment, leaving a letter folded the wrong way, pressing a flower that still smells too much like the royal garden, and your entire secret could be exposed. There's always that heart-stopping moment when your mother-in-law borrows your book for just a second, and you watch with frozen terror as she thumbs past 4 months of hidden confessions. Only a well-timed sneeze and an urgent question about the menu for Lent save your love life from becoming tomorrow's scandal. And it's not just your family you have to fool. The chaplain is a master of suspicion, with a nose for trouble that rivals the royal bloodhounds. You have to be careful never to appear too interested in the same psalm 2 days in a row. You must scatter your messages throughout the book, sometimes hiding them inside the cover, sometimes tucking them behind a particularly tedious prayer for rain. You become a virtuoso of piety and misdirection, half nun, half spy. There's a tactile intimacy in the ritual. Your lover's note is soft with the warmth of his hands, the ink faded where his thumb lingered too long. You memorize every word before destroying the evidence, burning the page in a candle, tearing it into scraps that vanish with the next morning's ashes. The secrecy makes every syllable sacred, every shared psalm a kind of whispered vow. The best moments, of course, are the responses. Sometimes it's a pressed petal, sometimes a new verse underlined, sometimes a whole poem tucked between the prayers for peace. Your fingers tremble as you turn the page, half expecting to find nothing but lines about repentance and good works, and instead discovering a single line written just for you. Tonight, beneath the north window. I'll wait as long as it takes. So you smile through the next formal supper, endure the endless small talk, and excuse yourself to pray before bed. Your heart races as you open your book, the ink still damp, the promise still fresh. In a world where even glances are dangerous, your prayer book becomes a lifeline, a diary, a letterbox, a love story in fragments. And if anyone asks, you're just a queen praying for the welfare of the kingdom. Maybe that's true. Maybe you're praying for something more, a secret kept, a love that survives the odds, and a harvest of happiness that for once is all your own. If you've never bribed a servant to swap your bed with a decoy, are you even royal? Tonight you sleep in the guest room, your nightgown stuffed with pillows, and your real self tiptoes out for a meeting in the west corridor. Shh, don't wake the dog. Let's dim the torches and tiptoe through the palace corridors as the clock strikes midnight. It's the time of night when all the best royal mischief happens, when the watchful eyes of 1,000 gossips are finally closed and only the most stubborn candle in the West Tower still flickers. You've been planning tonight's operation for weeks, down to the last borrowed hairpin and the extra dose of honey in the kitchen maid's tea, a bribe as sweet as it is effective. The art of the bedchamber switcheroo begins with preparation. First, you carefully arrange your decoy, a pile of pillows expertly shaped under your best nightgown, arranged just so that even the sharpest-eyed lady-in-waiting would swear you were snoring gently under the covers. Bonus points for artfully dishevelled hair spread over the linen. You practice your fake sleep breathing. The real trick, however, is making sure the dog doesn't blow your cover. Tonight you fed him half a roast chicken and tucked him beside your decoy, betting he'll defend your sleeping form with the loyalty only possible from someone in a food coma. Now for your escape. You slip on your softest slippers, the ones that muffle footsteps on ancient stone, and gently open the door. Every creak is a threat, every shadow a possible spy. You thank your lucky stars for old hinges and slightly deaf sentries. In the hallway you move quickly, heart thumping, passing portraits of ancestors who, if they could, would absolutely tattle for a plate of fresh pears. The west corridor is your destination, a quiet stretch lined with dusty tapestries and draughty alcoves, perfect for secret meetings and less perfect for warmth. You hold your breath as you pass the chamber of your cousin, notorious for late-night insomnia and even later-night snacking. You hear a sneeze from behind a door, someone's awake, but you press on, cloaked in adrenaline and just enough arrogance to pass for confidence. At the agreed-upon alcove, your co-conspirator waits, nervously twisting a ring on his finger. You exchange hushed words, trading news, laughter, maybe a note or a trinket. 5 minutes feels like a lifetime, each second balanced between ecstasy and the sheer terror of being caught in your nightclothes with someone who is not, strictly speaking, on the official list of permitted bedchamber visitors. Your whispers echo just enough to make you nervous, but not enough for the guards at the far end to hear over their dice game. The return journey is even more tense. You move with the caution of someone walking across a frozen pond in spring. Too fast and you'll slip. Too slow and someone will notice you're missing. At your door, you pause, listening for the telltale sound of a dog waking up, or a servant beginning her morning rounds a little too early. All is quiet except for the soft snores of your decoy and the contented sigh of your bribed hound. Slipping back into bed, you carefully adjust the pillows and blanket, erasing all traces of your absence. If you're lucky, no one will notice a thing. If you're unlucky, well, let's just say there's a reason every royal worth their salt keeps a pre-written explanation for why they were sleepwalking in the library at 2 a.m. Of course, there are close calls. One night your decoy's wig falls off. Another time, the dog decides to accompany you on your secret errand, trotting down the hallway like your furry alibi. Sometimes, a servant gets suspicious, but as it turns out, nothing reassures people like feigning a nightmare about turnips or reciting a prayer for the king's digestion. In the morning, you wake up in your own bed, looking perfectly innocent and a little more tired than usual. At breakfast, Lady Euphemia comments that you slept like the dead. You smile, sip your tea, and nod, all while keeping the secret that your night was anything but restful. Because in the world of royal intrigue, sometimes the difference between scandal and survival is just a well-placed pillow and the nerve to tiptoe where angels, and most royals, fear to tread. You can trust your nursemaid with everything, your hair, your heartbreak, your deepest secrets. But the nursemaid can also trust herself with a little blackmail, just in case she needs a raise. In the castle, loyalty is rented by the month. Let's revisit the only person in the palace who's seen you at your worst and still brings you tea. The nursemaid is a permanent fixture in the royal household, the silent sentinel who knows every childhood tantrum, every teenage rebellion, and every embarrassing mole you've tried to cover with rosewater and denial. She's seen you with your hair in tangles, your eyes red from crying, and your face streaked with pastry cream after a midnight raid on the kitchens. There are state secrets, and then there are the nursemaid stories. Hers could bring down a dynasty. Your day starts with her gentle knock, her arms loaded with hair ribbons, scented soap, and the kind of frank advice that would make a courtier faint. She braids your hair, tuts at your posture, and listens as you pour out every grievance. He smiled at Lady Margaret again. You complain, to which she responds with a knowing glance and the well-timed application of hairpins sharp enough to double as defensive weapons. She's the original palace security system. No one gets into your chamber without her say-so, not even your most persistent cousin. If you want a note delivered, a message whispered, or a rumour squashed before it escapes the nursery, she's your go-to fixer. Her loyalty feels as solid as the castle walls most of the time, but this loyalty, you learn early, is not unconditional. The nursemaid's loyalty is a clever, careful dance, equal parts devotion and business transaction. She's the first to know about your secret romance, and the first to remind you, gently but firmly, that news of a clandestine letter might accidentally slip if her stipend doesn't increase before Michaelmas. The art of blackmail is subtle. A raised eyebrow here, a mention of your childhood nickname there. She never threatens outright. She doesn't have to. The balance of power shifts with every whispered secret. One day, you need her to intercept a suspiciously nosy maid. The next, she needs a new pair of shoes for her nephew. Sometimes she simply wants a few nights off. After all, palace intrigue is exhausting work. You both understand the rules. She protects you from disaster. You keep her well supplied with gossip, gratitude, and the occasional velvet pouch of coins. The nursemaid knows everyone's business. She's the spider at the centre of the palace web, collecting tidbits from the kitchens, the laundry, the stable boys, and the Queen's own physician. She can predict the next scandal before anyone else has caught a whiff of it. And while she'll never betray you to a rival family, too much trouble, she isn't above reminding you of your more embarrassing moments if you start thinking about replacing her with a younger, less opinionated maid. But despite her occasional threats, you genuinely trust her. When your heart is broken, she knows exactly what tea to brew. When your nerves fray from court politics, she offers a shoulder to cry on and the best gossip to distract you. Her advice is sharp and honest. Her stories slightly exaggerated but always entertaining. She is your confidant, your mentor, your best defence against the cruel jokes of palace life. Of course, you can't let your guard down entirely. She's survived 3 royal households and 2 palace coups. She knows how to pick a winner. So you keep her close, share your secrets, and make sure she's happy. Because in a world where secrets are the real currency, the most trusted person in your life is also the one holding all the receipts. So you smooth your hair, fix your smile and walk out into the glare of the royal court with your nursemaid's parting words in your ear. She whispers, "Be careful, and remember who loves you." You do. You remember her, and you remember to keep the bribes flowing, just in case she suddenly develops a taste for a higher salary and a more interesting story to tell. You're not trying to assassinate anyone, just slip a few drops of a perfume your lover gifted you, so he knows you're thinking of him, and so the king doesn't suspect a thing. If your scent lingers in the hallway, you were definitely just airing out the tapestries. Let's waft through the world of royal scents, where perfume is as much armour as it is accessory. In the palace, everyone wears a signature fragrance, the king's aftershave, which smells faintly of ambition and disappointment, your mother-in-law's lavender that could knock out a horse, your cousin's rosewater, subtle as a brick through a stained glass window. But your perfume tonight is something different, delicate, almost dangerous, a blend of wildflowers and spices. It's the secret sign that only your lover will recognize. The bottle itself is small, hidden among 100 others on your dressing table. It was a gift, a clandestine treasure, slipped into your hand during a crowded feast beneath the tablecloth, accompanied by a smile that lasted just a second too long. Its scent is intoxicating, a little mysterious, with a note of something rare and forbidden. You dab it carefully on your wrists, your neck, and, most tellingly, on the corner of your handkerchief. The court thinks you're simply maintaining good hygiene. Your lover knows the truth. You've painted a trail through the palace for him to follow. Perfume for royal women is a subtle language. One scent means all is well, another says danger. A certain blend signals longing or caution, or that the king is about to throw another tantrum in the solar. Tonight's perfume is a message. I'm here. I'm thinking of you. And if anyone asks, I just enjoy smelling like expensive intrigue. But there's risk in every drop. Too much, and you'll be the subject of whispered rumours. She smells so sweet, the ladies-in-waiting titter. Perhaps she's hiding something or someone. Too little, and your lover will miss the sign, wandering the halls with a hopeful nose, dodging courtiers and risking a very awkward encounter with the master of the wardrobe. Timing is everything. You choose your routes carefully through the long hallway by the gallery, past the secret stairwell, into the music room where your lover will linger over a broken lute string, pretending to be lost in thought. Every step is a game of chess. You pause by a tapestry, pretending to examine its threads while letting your scent settle into the thick velvet folds. If anyone asks, you're checking for moths, a task you perform with the kind of seriousness reserved for international treaties. The king, of course, notices nothing. He's immune to romance and apparently to most smells. He assumes your perfume is just another frivolous royal expense, an indulgence justified by your station. Still, you must be cautious. One stray whiff could lead to suspicion, a sideways glance at supper, a question about your favourite flowers, a sudden investigation into the royal perfumery. To stay safe, you enlist the help of your most trusted maid, who accidentally spills the same scent in your chambers every morning, providing plausible deniability and a backup plan for when the gossips get restless. Then, of course, there are mishaps. One evening, you linger a little too long outside the council chamber, your perfume drifting inside and distracting half the lords from a very serious discussion about tariffs. Another time, a dog follows you down the hall, convinced you're hiding snacks. The castle cat, notoriously unimpressed by most things, takes up residence in your lap for an hour, spreading your scent to every corner of the palace. The next morning, your perfume is the talk of the town, equal parts admiration and suspicion. And yet, for all the complications, you wouldn't give up the ritual. The secret messages, the hidden thrills, the way a simple fragrance can carry your heart down winding corridors and straight into the arms of the one you love. In a world where so much is watched, measured, and controlled, the smallest freedoms, like choosing your own perfume, become acts of quiet rebellion. So when you catch the faintest whiff of that wildflower spice on your lover's sleeve at dinner, you exchange a glance and a tiny smile. The message has been received. The scent lingers. The secret remains safe, and you return to your seat, ready to swear you were simply airing out the tapestries, as any respectable queen would do. Ever sent a 12-year-old on a mission to deliver poetry in pairs? Welcome to Royal Romance Logistics. The page boy knows everyone's secrets, and is developing a promising career in bribery before his voice even changes. let's peek into the bustling, unpredictable world of the royal page boy, the original palace courier, spy, and, if we're being honest, a slightly chaotic, neutral force of nature. He's at that age where his tunic is too big, his shoes are too small, and his curiosity could topple kingdoms. On paper, his job is simple: run errands, deliver messages, fetch things, and try not to break anything important. In practice, he is the linchpin of every clandestine affair and questionable delivery within a 100-mile radius. The page boy's day starts before dawn, dashing between chambers with a fistful of notes and a mental checklist longer than the king's annual hunting speech. He's everywhere, lurking in doorways, darting behind tapestries, and popping up at your elbow with alarming frequency. Need to get a letter across the palace? He's your man. Want to slip a basket of pears into someone's chambers without alerting the kitchen staff? He's already on it, usually after negotiating the price of his silence. 1 sweetmeat per secret, payable on demand. You and your fellow conspirators quickly learn that, while adults might be bribed with gold or promises of favour, the page boy operates on a simpler currency: snacks, stories, and the thrill of being in on a real grown-up plot. A piece of cake earns you discretion for a day. A slice of cold pie, and you're guaranteed plausible deniability until next week. But the page boy's loyalty is as changeable as the weather. He serves whoever pays best, or whoever happens to be holding the biscuit tin. He learns early the art of plausible confusion. If caught, he feigns ignorance with the sincerity of a saint. Was I supposed to deliver this letter to Lady Cecily, or was it the cook's recipe for almond tarts? He asks, wide-eyed, as the note disappears into a hidden pocket. When pressed by nosy courtiers, he reveals nothing but the world's most innocent grin. Half angel, half professional liar. Some days his deliveries are simple. A book here, a bunch of violets there. Other days, the assignments border on the absurd. Take this poem to the Queen Solar, but if you see Lady Euphemia, hide in the laundry. Bring these candied figs to the east turret and say nothing to the man with the green hat. The boy takes it all in stride, occasionally adding his own flair, such as a doodle in the margins or a cryptic note warning of a rogue squirrel near the kitchens. The page boy is not just a messenger. He is the palace's living grapevine. He knows who is in love with whom, who is feuding, and which lords are feigning gout to avoid dancing lessons. He's seen secret tears and overheard midnight arguments through thin walls. His silence is bought daily, and his opinions, always delivered with a grin, carry more weight than anyone dares admit. You keep him close, always slipping him a treat or a compliment, never quite sure if he's working for you or your rival. Of course, there are hazards. Once, he nearly derails an affair by delivering a bouquet of parsley instead of posies. An innocent mix-up, he claims, though parsley means bad luck in the secret language of flowers. Another time, he's found in the cellar, eating the evidence, half a pigeon pie meant for a midnight feast. No one is quite sure how he survives the wrath of so many offended nobles, but he always bounces back, slightly dustier and even more indispensable. At the end of the day, when the candles burn low and the palace quiets, the page boy gathers his haul, a few coins, half a tart, and the knowledge that tomorrow's secrets will be just as juicy. He may be young, but he's already mastered the most important lesson of courtly love. Discretion is everything, but dessert is even better. So next time you're plotting palace mischief, remember to tip your page boy well. He's the messenger, the accomplice, and if you're lucky, the reason your poetry and pears arrive safely on the other side of the palace, unscathed and unremarked upon. For now, you need a new book. So does he. Coincidence? Hardly. The library becomes a nest of quick glances, hushed giggles, and dangerously suggestive Latin quotations. The librarian pretends not to notice. She's seen it all since 1452. Let's slip through the shadowy corridors of the palace, away from the noisy hall and ever-watchful eyes, and enter the kingdom of books. The library is, in theory, a place of learning, silent reflection, and the accidental inhalation of several centuries' worth of dust. In practice, it's the best spot in the palace for forbidden flirtation, especially if your love language happens to be medieval poetry, or just really bad puns in Latin. It all starts with a carefully timed visit. You declare, with a sigh only slightly more dramatic than necessary, that you simply must return your book of psalms and acquire something more stimulating. Your lover, by the strangest of cosmic coincidences, just so happens to have urgent business with the treatise on herbal remedies, which lives precisely 3 shelves above your book. You arrive at the same time, both acting surprised and awkward, as though you haven't planned the choreography to the minute. The librarian, unamused and immune to the concept of coincidence, gives you each a look that says, "Don't dog-ear the pages and don't even think about hiding in the alcoves." You drift through the stacks, exchanging accidental brushes of the hand as you reach for the same dusty volume. Conversation starts innocently enough. What do you think of Ovid? Have you read this commentary on Boethius? But it's never really about the books. The code is in the footnotes. He quotes a line from Virgil, something about burning desire and noble suffering, and you reply with a passage from St. Augustine, your eyes sparkling with mischief. Every phrase is loaded, every accidental page turn an invitation. The library itself is complicit in your charade. High windows spill golden afternoon light across ancient scrolls. The smell of leather, parchment, and candle wax hangs in the air, mingling with the faint scent of your perfume, just enough for your lover to notice. You find excuses to linger near each other, comparing illuminated letters, feigning outrage at the librarian's refusal to let anyone touch the forbidden books on the top shelf. At one point, you accidentally knock over a pile of dictionaries, providing just enough chaos to slip a folded note into his sleeve, while everyone else is distracted. The librarian, of course, has seen it all. She shuffles along the aisles, arching a knowing eyebrow every time your laughter gets a shade too joyful for silent study. Rumour has it she once chased 2 duchesses out with a rolled-up almanac for getting a little too friendly behind the philosophy section. She's discreet, though. As long as you return your books on time, she'll pretend the only thing happening is the usual exchange of overdue fines and passive-aggressive bookmarks. Sometimes, you and your lover sit at opposite ends of a long table, passing notes disguised as reading lists. "Please bring me book 4 and meet me at sunset in the rose garden." You read to each other in hushed tones, your voices barely audible above the turning pages and the distant hum of castle life. On the rare occasion when the library's empty, you share a conspiratorial smile, never lingering too long, always aware of the ticking clock and the possibility of being discovered by someone with a keen interest in gossip and a questionable understanding of privacy. Eventually, your accidental research is complete. You check out your books, 1 prayer manual and 1 scandalous poem, a combination no one will question, and say your goodbyes with the careful formality of people who have never, ever broken a single rule in their lives. The librarian marks your names in her ledger with a flourish, not even bothering to hide her smirk. As you return to the glare of daylight and duty, you clutch your borrowed volume, heart fluttering with the memory of secret words and forbidden laughter. In the world of royal secrets, sometimes the best hiding place is in plain sight, between the pages of a library book, preferably one that's due back next week. You spend hours stitching lilies onto silk, but every flower is a symbol, every vine a hidden message. Only your lover knows the code. A red rose means meet me at midnight, a bluebell means bring cake. Courtly love, now available in cross-stitch. Let's settle into the palace solar, where the windows are thrown wide to catch the afternoon sun, and the room hums with the gentle clatter of needles and the constant murmur of half-truths. Here, embroidery is far more than just a way to pass the time or fill the linen cupboards. It's a royal woman's double life, half art, half subterfuge, wholly necessary for sanity and secret survival. On the surface, you are a model of decorum, surrounded by your ladies, hands working busily as you create another innocent panel for the chapel altar, or a handkerchief for an upcoming wedding. But the truth is in the details. Each carefully chosen colour, every subtle stitch, and all those random motifs are part of a language as intricate as any cipher. This is a world where love and longing can be sewn, one clandestine thread at a time. You and your lover agreed on the code months ago, back when he first noticed your tendency to favour violets and your passion for stitching forget-me-nots in odd corners. Each flower is a message, each flourish a directive or a plea. You've memorised a dictionary only 2 people in the world could ever hope to understand. A lily signals hope, an ivy vine means be careful, and of course, the famous red rose placed just so on your sleeve is a summons for a midnight meeting in the old tower stairwell. The other ladies, bless them, see only pretty patterns. They praise your skill and gossip cheerfully as they stitch suns, stars, and birds of paradise into their own projects. To them, the bring cake bluebell is just a cheerful pop of colour, and the carefully stitched heart among the violets is nothing more than a flourish for the border. Even your nursemaid, who suspects everything, hasn't cracked the code, though she does mutter that you must have been a florist in another life. Your favourite projects are the most dangerous. You embroider a scarf for your lover, tucking a single red tulip beneath the pattern of oak leaves, code for I trust you, but beware the oaks. You work a tablecloth with so many hidden messages the kitchen staff jokes you must be planning a very complicated picnic. Your handkerchiefs are masterpieces of double meaning, fluttering innocently in the breeze but heavy with anticipation for those who know how to read between the stitches. The process itself is calming, needle in, thread out, the world fading into soft fabric and brighter threads. But it's also nerve-wracking. You have to balance visibility with subtlety. Too obvious, and even the king's pet spaniel will sniff out your secrets. Too subtle, and your lover will spend half the week wandering the gardens at the wrong time, looking for bluebells where there are none. Sometimes you exchange embroidery under the guise of gifts. A little something for your lapel, you say sweetly, handing over a square of silk laced with hidden warnings. He'll wear it proudly, pretending ignorance as he struts past your jealous rivals, none the wiser to the midnight plans embroidered next to the daffodils. Of course, there are close calls. Once, a suspicious aunt asks you to explain the meaning behind a particularly dense patch of violets. You smile serenely and launch into a long, dull explanation about Christian virtues. She nods, impressed by your devotion, and never suspects she's just heard an invitation for a secret rendezvous under the church windows. And so the days pass, one stitch at a time, secrets blooming on every scrap of silk. In a world where words are watched and actions are analysed, you've carved out a language that's yours alone, a living love letter that grows more daring with every loop and knot. So if you ever wonder what royal women think about while embroidering, look past the flowers and the flourishes. Every stitch is a story, every motif a memory, every finished piece a promise. In the end, your heart is not just on your sleeve, it's everywhere, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right eyes to see. Sometimes the king disappears for state business, sometimes so do you. The art is in never being missed at the same time. If you both return wearing matching pine needles, nobody says a word except the jester, who writes a song about it. Let's slip into the not-so-subtle world of royal alibis. In every palace there comes a time when the king is nowhere to be found, usually right after a particularly boring council meeting, or whenever he's expected to explain the household accounts. Officially, he's reviewing border security or inspecting the royal kennels. Unofficially, he's sneaking out for a little unscheduled exercise, which everyone knows is code for getting as far from the throne room as possible, without technically abdicating. You, being a resourceful royal woman with your own ambitions, have perfected the art of the vanishing act. Your state business is equally important. A sudden urge to oversee the new herb garden, an emergency inspection of the East Tower, or a pressing desire to count the spoons in the guest wing. The key is plausible deniability and a rotating cast of alibis. Today, you're helping Sister Mary with her embroidery. Yesterday, you were writing letters to foreign princesses. In reality, you were both missing at exactly the same time, which, by sheer coincidence, happened to coincide with a thunderstorm, a broken ladder, and a 3-hour gap in the palace records. Everyone is in on the game. The servants develop selective blindness, suddenly fascinated by the intricacies of the floor tiles whenever 2 sets of muddy boots reappear in the hall. The chamberlain nods, takes notes, and somehow never quite manages to remember who was where, when, or with whom. Your nursemaid, who sees everything and says nothing, leaves a towel by the door and a pot of tea simmering for your tired nerves. As for the jester, well, his next ballad will feature a royal squirrel hunt and 2 mysterious figures tangled in a pine bush, but even he knows when to keep the best verses to himself. The real challenge is timing. You both keep your own schedules, carefully orchestrated so your absences never quite overlap in the official ledgers. A well-timed note, a glance across the breakfast table, a subtle tap on the armrest. These are the signposts of your secret. It's a dance as old as monarchy itself, and one wrong step can mean disaster, or at least an awkward explanation about why the Queen's cloak smells faintly of pine sap and conspiracy. Occasionally, you're forced to improvise. Once, you're nearly caught by a particularly diligent steward, so you spend 20 minutes reciting the history of the royal greenhouse while brushing pine needles from your skirt. Another time, you both stumble back into the castle, just as the court chaplain is finishing his prayers, and you're forced to claim you were meditating together, on the virtues of outdoor devotion. Even the king isn't above suspicion. His disappearances are chalked up to everything from personal reflection to sudden interest in the wine cellar inventory. One memorable afternoon, he returns from his hunt with a suspiciously clean sword and a grin that says he's caught absolutely nothing except a cold and possibly a second wind for his midlife crisis. Meanwhile, the court gossips are relentless. They know something is up, but the details are always just out of reach. They speculate, inventing ever more elaborate tales about secret treaties, lost treasures, or the rumoured ghost in the bell tower. Little do they realise the truth is far more mundane and far more amusing. The greatest secret is that the king and his clever queen are both experts at the oldest trick in the book, being somewhere else entirely when responsibility comes calling. At dinner, you both appear perfectly composed, dressed to the nines and free of any stray pine needles. If anyone asks about your day, you recite a list of worthy and thoroughly boring activities. The king grumbles about the state of the kennels. You wax poetic about the library's mould problem. Across the table, the jester winks and hums a familiar tune, the only witness to your synchronized adventures. And so, the legend grows. Two royals, always present, never caught, united by a shared talent for slipping away just when duty threatens to spoil the fun. In a world of watchful eyes and wagging tongues, sometimes the greatest act of rebellion is simply to disappear, together, yet apart, and always with an alibi that smells suspiciously of pine. The only place safer than the chapel for a secret chat? The falconry. Everyone's pretending to care about birds, but half the nobles are swapping gossip, marriage proposals, or both. Falcons are easier to train than courtiers, but much messier. Let's wander over to the edge of the palace grounds, where the dignified chaos of the mews awaits. It's the rarest of royal settings, a place where feathers fly, tempers flare, and nobody expects you to mind your manners. The air is thick with the smell of straw, leather, and that particular pungency, unique to creatures who eat their food raw and would gleefully claw the eyes out of a prince if given the chance. Yet, for all its grit and guano, the falconry is a sanctuary of sorts, a refuge for secrets, schemes, and the kind of low-level anarchy you just can't pull off in the tapestry gallery. You arrive officially to check on your prized merlin, a bird whose personality is best described as demonic feather duster. But you're hardly the only one with business here. Nobles in sumptuous velvet stand shoulder to shoulder with scruffy pages and nervous squires, all busy pretending that what matters most is the health of the hawks, not the hotbed of palace intrigue swirling around their perches. The falcon master is somewhere in the background, shouting about jesses and lure training, but no one is really listening. Why bother? The birds are the only creatures here who don't gossip. It's the ideal venue for a clandestine chat. You can discuss everything from foreign politics to forbidden love without raising suspicion, provided you occasionally nod at a falcon and pretend you know what mewing means. Did you hear the news from Burgundy? Murmurs a countess, her gloved hand dangerously close to a beak with zero respect for blue blood. A duke proposes a marriage alliance between partridge hunts, while a lovesick baroness tries, and fails, to teach her bird to carry love notes. Spoiler: the note ends up shredded and half-eaten, which is probably for the best. You and your lover find your moment amid the flapping chaos. He's there, adjusting a leather hood on a restless gerfalcon. You're fussing over a supposedly sick kestrel that looks suspiciously healthy. Your conversation is all whispers and code, about the next meeting, about how the king is developing a suspicious cough, about whether anyone has noticed the flower embroidered on your glove. The background noise of squawking, screeching, and indignant flapping covers a multitude of secrets. Is less risky than the rose garden, and a great deal less likely to attract your Aunt Euphemia, who is allergic to feathers and all forms of fun. Of course, the danger isn't gone, just redistribute it. There's always the risk of a loose falcon taking flight with your scarf, or an ambitious page boy eavesdropping from behind a barrel of pigeon feed. And the birds themselves are not the most discreet messengers. Many a clandestine letter has been turned into nesting material, or, worse, left as a grisly surprise in someone's hood. Scandals have a way of hatching here too. Once, a particularly ill-tempered eagle managed to knock a lord's wig clean off mid-conversation, revealing more than just a bald spot. Another time, two rival duchesses found themselves competing to impress the falcon master, who, to everyone's delight, preferred the company of birds to any form of human courtship. Still, the Falconry Mews are a palace within the palace. Here you can laugh a little louder, trade rumours a little bolder, and send coded messages under the cover of caring for your sweet darling, who is currently eating a rabbit, bones and all. In a world where every hallway has ears and every curtain could hide a spy, sometimes your best confessor is a bird of prey with absolutely no patience for human foolishness. So the next time scandal strikes, or you just need a breath of air and a moment to be yourself, you'll find yourself drifting back to the Mews, glove on hand, heart a little lighter, and secrets safely hidden in the ruffle of your falcon's feathers. After all, in the grand pecking order of palace intrigue, sometimes it pays to keep your head down and your hawk well fed. You're not supposed to eat in your rooms, but when your lover smuggles in pastries from the royal kitchens, who can resist? Feasting by candlelight, you toast your own ingenuity, pray the crumbs don't give you away, and hope the rats respect your privacy. Let's sneak into the soft glow of your chamber, door firmly bolted, heart racing from the double thrill of love and carbohydrates. The rules of palace life are simple. Meals are taken together, watched over by a battalion of etiquette enforcers, and that one steward who can spot a smuggled grape at 50 paces. Which is exactly why the forbidden feast, stolen pastries and secret suppers, is twice as delicious. It's not just about the food, it's about the rebellion, the secret, the sweet sense of getting away with something decadent and just a little bit dangerous. Tonight, you've coordinated with your partner in crime, also known as the only person in the palace who would risk excommunication for a cinnamon bun. The plan is precise. A coded note tucked under your napkin at breakfast, a glance across the banqueting table, the tiniest of nods as the musicians strike up a particularly dull ballad. Hours later, after the castle finally settles, you find a bundle on your windowsill wrapped in linen and still warm from the oven. You peel it open, hands trembling, nose filled with the aroma of butter, sugar and liberation. Pastries are the gold standard. Fruit tarts, little almond cakes, the elusive chocolate-dipped eclairs that everyone pretends not to crave. Sometimes there's a hunk of sharp cheese, a fistful of candied violets, or, on rare occasions, a sausage roll so spicy you have to eat it in silence to avoid gasping. Each morsel is a victory, a reminder that not all royal indulgences require a coronation or a formal declaration. The scene is always the same. Two figures huddled over a flickering candle, sitting cross-legged on a pile of quilts, faces half-lit by anticipation and hunger. Conversation drifts between whispers and laughter, pausing only for mouthfuls of contraband delight. You trade stories and crumbs, wiping icing sugar from your lips and making ridiculous promises to eat nothing but boiled turnips for the rest of the week, lies you both know will be broken at the next opportunity. But secrecy demands vigilance. Every plate must be cleaned, every crumb swept up before sunrise. The dog, usually banned from your bed, is now an accomplice, sniffing up any stray morsel and hopefully keeping the rat population at bay. You debate the best hiding spots for leftovers. The wardrobe, under the bed, inside a hollowed-out book, knowing that the palace staff has an uncanny sixth sense for sniffing out rule breakers. Of course, there are risks. Once, you forget to lock the door and nearly give the game away to a well-meaning chambermaid with a passion for midnight dusting. Another time, a passing guard comments on the strange smell coming from your chambers, and you have to invent a new ritual involving rosemary and spiritual purification. Worst of all is the evidence. A single stray cherry pit, or a smudge of jam on your sleeve, sure to raise suspicions among the ever-watchful Lady Euphemia. Still, you persist. There's a thrill in doing what's forbidden, in making even the smallest act your own. And in these feasts, you taste not just pastries, but freedom, a moment of joy in a life where every movement is scrutinized, every word catalogued, every appetite regulated by centuries of tradition and the world's most humorless butler. When the feast ends and the candle gutters, you lean back against the pillows, full and content. The moonlight sneaks in, catching the sparkle of sugar on your fingertips. You and your lover exchange a final conspiratorial grin before parting for the night, each clutching a memory sweeter than any official banquet. In the quiet, you vow to remember these small rebellions, these secret meals, these forbidden bites, as the true taste of happiness. And as dawn creeps in, you smooth the sheets, banish the last crumbs, and rehearse your innocent yawn for the servant's morning check. Let the record show. Sometimes the most dangerous affairs in the palace are the ones conducted by candlelight, with nothing more lethal than a stolen tart and a shared smile in the dark. Love affairs have consequences, and sometimes the consequences need new dresses with suspiciously loose waists. Nursemaids, doctors, and a priest who doesn't see a thing. Everyone has a price. The real miracle? Keeping your secret for 9 months. Let's tiptoe into the palace's most nerve-wracking secret. A royal pregnancy with the clock set firmly against you. In a world where every sideways glance is a full-scale investigation, and your wardrobe choices are the subject of breakfast gossip, discretion becomes a matter of survival. Gone are the days when you could simply indulge in a midnight pastry and pass off your queasiness as too much marzipan. Now, every flutter of your stomach is scrutinized by half the court, and every new gown is inspected for clues. The game begins with fashion. Your seamstress, a minor miracle worker and seasoned conspirator, starts designing the new silhouette, loose, flowing, and conveniently on trend for the season. Suddenly, court fashion is all about comfort, empire waists, artfully draped shawls, and the mysterious return of oversized fans. You praise her genius in public, ensuring that half the noblewomen immediately copy your style, thus camouflaging your real purpose behind a wave of billowing fabric. Next, your nursemaid and physician become co-conspirators in your growing web of secrecy. The nursemaid, already a vault of royal dirt, guards your door like a dragon, admitting only those with a legitimate reason and the right amount of ignorance. The physician is handsomely bribed and sworn to silence, making routine health checks that are publicly attributed to the rigours of royal life, or the ongoing crisis of female nerves. The palace priest, meanwhile, suddenly has very poor eyesight and an uncanny ability to recommend long confessions behind closed doors. He's seen it all, heard it all, and if pressed, would swear that your greatest sin is an excess of charity work. You become a master of deflection. Nausea? Blame the new kitchen maid's overly enthusiastic use of garlic. Cravings? Why, you've simply rediscovered a passion for candied ginger and pickled onions, and who can blame you in times of stress? When you start avoiding your favourite dances or skipping late-night feasts, you claim you're on a spiritual retreat, one that requires many, many naps. If anyone asks, you're feeling a bit delicate, which is both entirely true and entirely misleading. Your greatest allies, oddly enough, are palace tradition and the staggering inefficiency of royal bureaucracy. The court is so tangled in etiquette and ceremony that most people would never dare ask a direct question. Rumours swirl, of course. Some think you're ill, others believe you're heartbroken, and a few are convinced you've joined a secret fasting cult. The only person with a clue is Lady Euphemia, and she's so busy tracking missing teaspoons that she misses the real story right under her nose. Every day is a tightrope. You monitor your reflection obsessively, adjusting sashes and scarves with the precision of a spy. You rehearse your stories at night, preparing for the inevitable day when someone gets just a bit too curious. Some nights you whisper your worries to the nursemaid, who reassures you in the only way she knows, by listing every secret pregnancy she's ever helped conceal. It's a long list. The months crawl by. As the time draws near, arrangements are made, an illness that requires a stay at your family's country estate, or perhaps a convenient religious pilgrimage that just happens to coincide with your due date. Trusted staff are sent ahead. The priest schedules a suspicious number of masses for safe travels. A physician is borrowed from a distant cousin, discreet and expensive. And finally, when the day arrives, the palace continues on as usual, unaware, distracted, and none the wiser. You return in due time, slightly thinner, notably tired, but once again at the centre of court life, dressed in the latest trend of voluminous sleeves. The miracle is complete. You've kept your secret, protected your heart, and written another chapter in the endless saga of royal survival. Because in a world of prying eyes and wagging tongues, the true miracle isn't new life. It's that you managed to hide it at all. Sometimes secrets come out and you're packed off to a country retreat with suspicious speed. But royal women have a habit of making comebacks, whether by letter, by proxy, or by inventing a whole new religion. If you can't beat the court, outlast it. Let's pull back the velvet curtain on the palace's dirtiest laundry day, the aftermath of a royal scandal. Maybe it was a love letter intercepted by the wrong person, a midnight meeting witnessed by a servant with an excellent memory, or simply too many loose-waisted dresses for even the slowest gossips to ignore. Whatever the cause, the machinery of royal damage control springs into action with dazzling efficiency and all the subtlety of a fire in the drapery. You're barely given time to pack before you're whisked away to the family estate or a remote abbey, somewhere with more sheep than servants and fewer witnesses than the royal crypt. The official story is always the same: rest and recovery, a spiritual retreat, an urgent need to study landscape painting. Meanwhile, the real reason is quietly circulated through coded whispers and exaggerated shrugs. By the time you reach the country, your reputation has made the journey 3 days ahead, picking up extra rumours along the way. Exile at first feels like a punishment. The rooms are cold, the food is bland, and the staff are either too deferential or too eager to share your misfortunes with the next traveller who wanders by. You take up hobbies, embroidery, reading, the occasional dramatic sigh by the window for the benefit of the birds. At night, you replay every misstep, every ill-chosen word, and every moment you underestimated Lady Euphemia's ability to decode embroidery patterns. But here's the thing about royal women: you are not so easily erased. If the court wants to forget you, you'll make it impossible. The art of the comeback begins with letters, pages and pages, written in your neatest hand, full of charm and wit and carefully selected news. You send them to every influential relative, every ally left in the palace, and most importantly to the palace chaplain, who can be counted on to quote your most pious lines at every opportunity. If letters aren't enough, you work by proxy. Friends and family in court become your eyes and ears, carrying your messages, dropping your name into conversation, and feeding you the juiciest gossip in return. You cultivate alliances from afar, offering favours, advice, or simply a sympathetic ear. In a world obsessed with proximity and presence, you become omnipresent, your absence noticed, your silence a provocation. Some exiles turn to even grander gestures. Why not start a religious reform movement? Nothing makes a palace reconsider your value like a sudden groundswell of popular piety. Or perhaps you stage a comeback through sheer force of personality, returning to court not as the humbled penitent, but as the unbothered survivor, draped in fashionable new fabrics and an even sharper sense of humour. Meanwhile, back at court, time works in your favour. Scandals fade, replaced by newer, shinier dramas. The noble who exposed your secret is now embroiled in his own. Lady Euphemia is distracted by the discovery of a stolen candlestick. Your rivals grow bored, and your allies grow nostalgic. Before long, rumours of your unjust suffering start to circulate, and the court begins to wonder if, perhaps, you were treated a bit too harshly. And then comes your return. Maybe you're summoned back with great ceremony, or maybe you simply show up one afternoon, smile polite and posture perfect, as if nothing ever happened. The court, never one to admit error, welcomes you with cautious enthusiasm. The king pretends he missed your company, your enemies eye you warily, and your friends race to fill you in on everything you missed, while carefully editing out anything truly scandalous. In the end, your story isn't one of defeat, but of survival and reinvention. You endured exile, outlasted gossip, and returned stronger, wittier, and even more inscrutable than before. If you can't beat the court, you outlast it. That's the true art of royal comebacks: to endure, to adapt, and to never ever let a scandal be the end of your story. History books are written by victors, but palace gossip is written by survivors. Long after the scandals are forgotten, your secret affairs live on in rumours, nursery rhymes, and the suspiciously curly hair of the next generation. In the end, maybe the greatest legacy is knowing you were never truly caught. Let's wander down the palace halls one last time, where the marble echoes with 1,000 footsteps and the walls themselves seem to lean in, eager to catch the next juicy detail. Kings and queens may command armies, but in the shadows the real power is wielded by the ones who keep the stories alive, not on parchment, but in whispers traded over morning tea and behind fans at the opera. You learn early that official history is about as reliable as a court jester's alibi. The grand tapestries might depict heroic battles and lavish coronations, but the true tales, the ones people actually care about, are passed from maid to footman, from nursemaid to future queen, and eventually to the bored children who will sing your story in the gardens for generations to come. Those nursery rhymes the little ones chant as they skip down the cloisters, they're coded histories, thinly veiled references to illicit affairs, secret pacts, and the time Lady Cecily got caught with the Master of the Hounds behind the dovecote. The Queen with the hidden ring, or the midnight visitor with the silver shoes, they're all nods to scandals that never quite made it into the official record, but everyone knows anyway. Each verse a gentle warning, a sly wink to the next generation, that palace life is never as simple as it looks from the outside. As for your own legacy, it's rarely found in statues or official portraits. It's there in the raised eyebrows and meaningful pauses when a new child is presented at court, especially if said child sports a head of unruly curls or a mischievous grin that looks suspiciously like a certain royal scribe's. There are always whispers about birthmarks, eye colour, or an uncanny knack for music that skips an entire branch of the family tree. You smile quietly at the speculation, neither confirming nor denying, because the not knowing is half the fun. The survivors, the maids, the nursemaids, the retired cooks and aging valets keep your stories alive in the kitchens and servants' quarters. They remember who left roses on whose pillow, who always requested extra candles for late-night reading, and who seemed far too cheerful at breakfast after a stormy night. They know the value of a good story, and the importance of letting certain truths slip only after dessert. Over time, the sharpest scandals soften at the edges. What was once a crisis becomes a quirk, a tale told for laughs at dinner, or as a gentle warning to the next clever girl with too many secrets and too much time on her hands. Your worst day becomes a lesson, your narrow escape an inspiration, and your love letters, burned, buried, or tucked in prayer books, take on a kind of mythic status. Did you hear about the Queen who embroidered messages in her handkerchiefs? Wasn't she the one who smuggled cakes to the stables? And what about the prince with the fondness for lilies? All true, and yet, not the whole truth. Eventually, even the oldest courtiers are gone, and the official historians close their books with a sigh. The only record left is the one that matters, the collective memory of a palace that thrives on mystery, drama, and the delightful uncertainty of what really happened, and to whom. You, the legendary survivor, remain an enigma. Your name preserved not just in marble, but in the soft, persistent hum of gossip, the flicker of a knowing glance, and the laughter that drifts from the nursery at dusk. And that, perhaps, is the best legacy of all, to be remembered not for being perfect or pure, but for being clever, brave, and just a little bit impossible to pin down, to have lived, loved, and schemed well enough that your true story will always be a little too slippery for the history books, but absolutely irresistible to everyone else. Every queen needs a confidant, and sometimes the safest ears in the palace belong to a lapdog with a bow or a cat with a suspiciously regal attitude. When you need to vent, plot, or deliver a letter, you tuck it in the collar of your beloved pet. No one suspects the spaniel. The only risk? If your secret goes missing, hope it wasn't swapped for a chicken bone in the kitchens. Let's slip into the sunlit corners of your private chambers, where, beneath the flurry of silks and the murmur of courtiers, a four-legged shadow follows your every move. Palace pets are everywhere, lounging in window seats perched atop velvet cushions and, if you're honest, eavesdropping on more confidential conversations than the chief advisor. In a world where every servant could be a spy and every tapestry a trap, your lapdog, or the palace cat with eyes like ancient emeralds, becomes your truest ally. Your day starts with a gentle scratch behind the ears and a whispered good morning, delivered to the one soul guaranteed not to gossip at supper. Or so you think. The dog, a ball of fluff and misplaced dignity, quickly learns that the best way to earn treats is to loyally guard your secrets, sometimes literally, by refusing to leave the bedchamber while you hastily write a coded note. The cat, meanwhile, exudes an aura of indifference, but you have your suspicions. If there's a sound in the corridor at midnight, it's the cat who warns you first, slinking across the floor to bat at the hem of your nightgown as if to say, you're not alone. It doesn't take long for you to realise the advantages. Need to pass a message to your nursemaid or slip a note to your lover in the stables. You roll it tightly and tuck it into a little pouch sewn into your dog's collar. The hound bounds down the hallway, tail wagging, a paragon of innocence. Even the most suspicious chamberlain wouldn't think to frisk a royal spaniel for correspondence. On the rare occasions when the dog returns empty-collared and suspiciously well-fed, you know he's made a detour to the kitchens and bartered your secret for a sausage. The cat is an even greater asset. Agile, silent, and most importantly prone to vanishing at the first sign of trouble. If you want a message delivered to the West Tower or the garden wall, You slip it beneath the cat's ribbon and trust feline instincts to avoid every pair of prying eyes. Sometimes you swear the cat even listens in on the council meetings, returning to you with an air of satisfied smugness, just as news of the king's latest scheme hits the grapevine. But pets are not infallible. There are close calls, a letter chewed into oblivion by overzealous puppy teeth, a ribbon snagged on a banister and discovered by the most insufferable pageboy in the palace. Once your dog reappears with a scrap of lace that definitely did not belong to you, prompting days of speculation and a minor diplomatic incident with a visiting duchess. You spend half your life concocting explanations for why your animals have such expensive taste in accessories. And yet, the benefits outweigh the risks. You confide in your lapdog when the palace politics become overwhelming, telling him secrets you would never dare commit to paper. When the walls feel too close and every shadow threatens exposure, it's the cat who settles at your feet, purring a lullaby that soothes your nerves. Your pets become part of your clandestine network, silent witnesses to schemes, heartbreaks, and the very best gossip. Of course, as with all things royal, there are rumours. Some say your spaniel is a reincarnated advisor. Others believe the cat understands 6 languages and can recite half the psalms. You neither confirm nor deny, after all, a queen needs her mysteries, and a little superstition is a small price to pay for privacy. So in the chaos of palace life, when every human ear is a liability, you find sanctuary in the quiet loyalty of fur and whiskers. The lapdog keeps your secrets safe, the cat plots with you in moonlit corners, and you fall asleep knowing that, for once, your confidant isn't angling for a promotion or a royal favour, just a little affection, and maybe, if you're feeling generous, half a leftover tart. Palace musicians are always around, strumming away at lutes and warbling through madrigals, but you know every coded lyric and hidden glance that passes when the court's listening to music. A certain melody means meet at the second verse. A wrong note, abort mission, the king's just walked in. Your favourite waltz is actually the soundtrack to your double life. Let's slip behind the heavy doors of the music room, a place that, at first glance, seems designed purely for soothing nerves and impressing foreign ambassadors. But beneath the plucking of strings and the gentle hum of harmony, the real symphony is happening between the lines. Music, after all, is the universal language, and you've turned it into your own private dialect of love, danger, and possibility. It starts with the musicians themselves. Some are palace regulars, so skilled at reading a room that they can sense a brewing scandal before the first note. Others are your allies, bribed with coins, compliments, or, on more than one occasion, a slice of cake filched from the kitchens. Together, you've orchestrated a system so elaborate even the choirmaster would be impressed. A trill in the opening measures of a pavane means all is well. A brief discordant chord signals the jester is lurking. And if the lute player repeats the first bar, run. Just run. Rehearsals are half subterfuge, half farce. You spend hours practicing a certain air, humming a tune that in truth is a coded message for your confidant across the room. You nod at the harpsichordist who knows to switch to the minor key if your Aunt Euphemia appears, or to start Greensleeves if you need to make a quick and dignified exit. Sometimes you accidentally drop a handkerchief embroidered with musical notes, the real message hidden in which notes are stitched sharp or flat. Your lover knows the system too. A particular verse sung twice means meet in the gallery at dusk. If the flutist lingers on a certain passage, it's a warning. Lady Margaret is on the prowl. Even the lyrics themselves are code. You've written whole sonnets together, passing them off as folk ballads, each line packed with inside jokes and double meanings that fly right over the heads of your most insufferable relatives. The music room, with its high ceilings and rows of leaded windows, is your stage. You drift through the crowd listening for the secret cues. Sometimes your lover dares to glance up from his viol, lips barely moving as he mouths the agreed-upon phrase. The game is as thrilling as any masked ball, with the added challenge of not breaking into laughter or revealing your intent to the ever-watchful steward in the corner. Inevitably, there are close calls. Once the wrong melody is played and you find yourself nearly meeting your brother-in-law in the conservatory instead of your beloved. Another time, the pageboy swaps your music sheet, and the signal for everything safe turns out to be an ode to cabbages, resulting in a week's worth of confusion and, oddly, a bumper crop in the palace gardens. But when the plan works, it's perfect. The musicians strike up your special waltz, and as the courtiers twirl and bow, you catch your lover's eye across the floor. The first refrain is your cue. The second verse is his. You slip away, heart pounding, marvelling at how a few simple notes can outwit an entire palace of professional eavesdroppers. When the music finally fades and the guests disperse, you linger, humming your favourite tune, your secret, your signal, your signature of rebellion. In a world where words are watched, actions are analysed, and every letter is at risk of interception, music is the one language left that's truly yours. So next time the harpsichord plays a little too loudly, or the court singer suddenly forgets a line, watch closely. In the palace, every concert is a conversation, every melody a map, and your heart is forever keeping time to the beat of a forbidden waltz. Everyone complains about the endless drafts in the palace corridors except you, because the cloakroom is where half your plotting takes place. Under the guise of hunting for your missing shawl, you whisper plans behind moth-eaten tapestries and pass coded glove pulls to allies. The real miracle is that your winter cloak hasn't been accidentally stolen by your cousin for the 5th time. Let's slip past the grandeur of the ballroom and the ever-watchful eyes in the main hall to that shadowy, slightly musty corner of the palace, the cloakroom. It's a wonder of medieval engineering, packed with every variety of wool, fur and velvet known to humankind, all hanging together like a tangle of secrets waiting to be untangled. To most, it's a place of inconvenience, a chilly, crowded space where cloaks go to vanish and gloves are lost to the mists of time. But to you, it's a stage for some of your most daring acts of subterfuge. The cloakroom is rarely empty. There's always someone rummaging for a missing muff or lamenting the fate of their favourite bonnet. But that's precisely what makes it so useful. In the confusion, a dozen small dramas unfold every hour, perfect cover for a whispered meeting or the hasty passing of a secret note. No one notices if you linger a little too long among the furs, or if you accidentally brush against a rival, pressing a message into her palm or retrieving one from a hidden pocket. The language of the cloakroom is all in the details. A green glove dropped near the entrance is a sign to meet in the library. A red scarf knotted twice means trouble in the garden. You and your inner circle have worked out a whole system. Cloak folds signal safe passage, and the way a hood is draped can mean wait for further instructions. Once, you sent a desperate warning by arranging a row of boots in reverse order, code for Lady Euphemia is about. Of course, there's a certain thrill in the danger. The ever-present threat of being caught in mid-conspiracy by a nosy footman, or, worse, your kleptomaniac cousin, who seems to regard every item in the cloakroom as fair game. On more than one occasion, you've retrieved your own shawl only to find it accidentally monogrammed by someone else. The palace seamstresses have a side business in removing initials and adding new ones, discreetly, for a fee. And then there are the tapestries, those heavy moth-eaten masterpieces that line the back wall, offering perfect cover for a quiet conversation. Under the pretense of admiring the faded unicorn or lamenting the moth holes, you and your allies can exchange news, pass warnings, or even hatch whole plots, provided you keep your voices low and your glances innocent. You have become adept at feigning concern for textile preservation, all while planning your next strategic move. Some cloakroom conspiracies are grand. The smuggling of an entire basket of pastries to the kitchens, a campaign that required 3 accomplices, 2 false alarms, and 1 heroic page boy armed with a feather duster. Others are more mundane, a whispered tip about the location of tonight's dance card, or a hand-squeezed reassurance before a particularly harrowing supper with the king. The real miracle isn't that you've managed to outwit your enemies and your cousin this long. It's that the palace cloakroom, with all its confusion and chaos, has become your most reliable headquarters. Every winter you marvel at your continued luck, your cloak still hanging, mostly where you left it, your schemes safely under wraps, your secrets swirling in the scented shadows of fur and wool. So, while others grumble about the cold and the chaos, you look forward to every draft and every missing glove. The next plot, the next adventure, the next tiny act of rebellion, it all starts right here, between a velvet cape and a moth-bitten tapestry, where every conspirator knows, in this palace, if you want to change history, you'd better start in the cloakroom. And so, as the palace candles flicker and fade, we leave behind the velvet-draped corridors, the moonlit gardens, and the echo of whispered secrets tangled in silk. You've survived another royal day, dodging watchdog aunts, decoding embroidery, bribing nursemaids, and outwitting more palace intrigue than any group chat ever could. Tonight, as you settle into your bed, hopefully without pine needles or a lapdog plotting blackmail, take a moment to marvel at the absurd resilience of those who came before us. They found ways to love, laugh, and scheme under the weight of crowns, corsets, and 100 watchful eyes. All so they could sneak a pastry, share a letter, or steal a moment of joy in a world determined to catalogue their every move. Maybe that's the secret gift history leaves us, a reminder that people have always been stubborn, hopeful, and wonderfully ridiculous. That even when the stakes are high and the rules seem endless, someone, somewhere, is risking everything for a chance at happiness, or, at the very least, a midnight snack. So tonight, as you drift off in the comfort of your own room, with privacy, pyjamas and indoor plumbing, whisper a quiet thank you to the royal women who hid their hearts between the lines. Be grateful for modern life, and remember, the world may be nosy, but nothing beats the satisfaction of keeping just one secret all to yourself. Sleep well, dream of clever comebacks, and know that if you ever find yourself caught in a tangle of love, gossip, and poorly folded laundry, you're in excellent historical company. Good night.